If you suspect your child's using drugs, one of the biggest things I recommend to parents is do whatever it is you can to get your kid help immediately. Do not put it off. Do not wait. In my opinion, going to get them evaluated by a counselor or an addiction specialist is one of the most important things that you can do to find out exactly what's going on. Parents can see a lot of the different signs and symptoms or know a lot of different signs and symptoms. What I always tell parents in these type of seminars or speaking engagements is to go with your gut. If you think something's off, something probably is.
Moms, please turn on your gut. It's screaming at you. It's there for a reason. If I hadn't done that and invaded his privacy, he could be 6 feet under right now, or a non-functioning adult in college having a really good time.
First of all, do not put your head in the sand. Don't be the ostrich and just think, well, it was one time, or every kid does it, it's not that serious. If you suspect your child is doing something that is illegal and harmful to them, which drinking is going to be harmful to a child who already does not have the capacity to make decisions and use good judgment in the same way as an adult does, all those things are affected and exacerbated by adding alcohol into the mix. Just like the slogan about parents are the best anti-drug. Well, alcohol is a drug. Parents are the best anti-alcohol as well. And you are responsible. You are there 24/7. You are there far more than any judge is ever going to be, any probation officer is ever going to be. And it is your responsibility to make sure you know what your kids are doing, who they're doing it with, where they're going. And if you provide the appropriate structure and let them know this is not okay, it will not be tolerated, it will not be accepted, and then you make sure, as I said, that you know where they are, who they're hanging around with, where they're going, check up on them, don't take their word for it.
They always say, don't you trust me? And I say, trust but verify. Later when I realized my son, everything that came out of his mouth was a lie, when he said, don't you trust me, I would say no. And then the common response is, Mom, everybody thinks you're crazy, right? And I'd say, yes, crazy as a loon. Fine. You have to get over trying to be your kid's friend or caring what their friends think. The other thing is, my son would say, when you put boundaries down, the harder a kid pushes against them, he says it is usually an indication of how much they're involved. Because they're great. People say, oh, I think things are going really well in our family, so-and-so's doing great. And I said, oh, that's because you haven't come in between you and their drug friends or their drug use.
And this is the lecture I give in court all the time. You can greatly reduce the likelihood that your kids will do something that you don't want them to do or come to a tragic end in some way or the other. And it happens. Never going to happen to me. Well, it did. And there you are sitting there. It's not just you, not just your child that'll suffer the consequences. It's you. It'll be you sitting beside them in court. It'll be you receiving the lecture from the judge. It'll be you potentially being ordered by the judge to do certain things as well as your child if you end up in a legal setting because of your child's alcohol use of any kind, which is going to be illegal until they're 21 years of age.
Take 2 days. Tell your kid that you are so upset that you just need to think about this and get a plan. Because what happens usually is we just go berserk. How can you do this to me? Da, 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 da. You need to have a plan. Because my son said, there was another time I drug tested him, went to the doctor's office, and he came up positive for pot, and I didn't do anything. He said, never do that, because that's a thumbs up. All clear to do drugs. You have to have a plan. You have to know what you're going to be doing. And it was interesting. I also asked my kids, prevention is about having clear expectations. But the other thing, what do you do when you find out, your little baby has used or drank? And it was really interesting. All 3 of them were how you react the first time really dictates how the next couple years will go. They felt you should come down very strongly. They said unemotional. Just say, okay, we've discussed this, these are the consequences. And my son, who had the addiction problem, he was probably the strictest. He says the phone has to go, the money supply has to shut off. He cannot have any jobs that are cash. No, and if you find your kid in your change drawer a lot, you've got a problem. And also the car, make the kid take the bus. The other one thing I want to talk about is drug testing. The other thing my son says, if you have any indication there is anything going on, alcohol, smoking cigarettes, pot. He said where there's smoke, he said in our county, there's a forest fire. So he says as soon as you have a whiff of anything, you need to do a drug test. And he said not a pot drug test, a 12 panel. He says because what we're trying to do is prevent these kids from getting what he calls the drugs that take no prisoners. Meth, OxyContin, which is heroin in a pill form. Those three drugs take no prisoners. So those are the things that you're trying to protect your kids. Don't think it's a phase. You need to drug test them, and you also, there's a way to drug test. And people always say, how do you do it? Google, Google drug testing your child. And you have to be aware of that. You have to surprise them.
I got sober as a teenager myself, and I got high for an entire year before my parents caught me one time. And the major point of that is I had wonderful parents that watched me very closely, that brought me to all my hockey games growing up, that spent a lot of time with me. I was that sneaky, and it was that easy for me to manipulate and calm the situation for them to really have a clear picture of what was going on. So if you caught your kid once, and this is with most teenagers, the odds are heavily in the favor that there's more going on. So if you catch a kid one time, the long and short of it is go get help, immediately. The other thing that I explain to parents is if you're feeling guilty, a lot of parents deal with guilt when they catch their kid. This must somehow be my fault. I must have done this to my kid. Again, I can tell you, someone that got sober and into recovery as a teenager, I had wonderful parents, and they did all the right things, and they were always with me. I chose to hop out the window the first time at 13 or 14 years old and smoke that first joint. My parents didn't choose that. Neither my mom nor dad chose that for me. I chose that. So if you're experiencing guilt, the best thing I can suggest is to deal with that, because that's going to block you from really moving forward and getting your kid the help that they need. One of the things that's most important for the recovery process to work for a young person is sobriety has to be fun. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and tell you drugs weren't fun. I abused drugs as a young person, and it was fun. And most teenagers abuse drugs, usually not because of a deep-seated reason, but because it's fun to do, and that's what their friends are doing. But then you combine that with low self-esteem and addictive personalities, and you can see where the problem comes in. For the recovery process to work, sobriety has to be attractive. So when you're looking for help for your kid, make sure that they're zeroing in on how can sobriety be fun for them. They're a teenager. Something has to be in it for them. That's how they think. What's in it for me? If sobriety is a drag, if it's boring, if it's monotonous, if sobriety means sitting at home on Friday night staring at the wall, they're not going to want to get sober. So whenever you're proceeding in getting your kid help that has a drug and alcohol problem, that's one of the biggest things that I always tell parents to look for is wherever you're getting them help, make sure it has that attraction component, because that's critical to the recovery process. Don't give up. If you're catching your kid using and you're taking them to counselors or treatment, my parents had to try 4 or 5 different professional forms of help until they really found something that worked, because they kept catching me getting high, so they were very adamant about getting me the help and doing something for me. At the same time, there's a lot of great things out there in the community. You have to find something that works for your kid, and just because the first thing that they go to or the first person they talk to they don't come counseling isn't going to work, or, you know, I guess they're just going to get high and there's nothing I can do about it. My parents didn't give up, and I would not have 11 years clean and sober if they did. So that is one of the biggest benefits to parents really making a commitment to themselves that they're going to do whatever it takes to get their kids sober.
Just be persistent, you know. I mean, when it gets to the lowest point, you know, just that's when you got to be the strongest as a parent, you know. I mean, that's what I noticed from my parents, you know. It's like, just you can't give up on it, you know. I'm sure my parents have wanted to give up on me so many times, you know, just like, God, you know, why won't he stop doing this? You know, he's so hard-headed, but just stay on him about it. And that's all you can do, you know.
I thought, oh, this is going to change my life. There was a part of me that said, you know, everything looks great on the surface. Do I really want to do this? And I thought, yeah, I really do. And because of that, I get why parents don't want to. I get why they want to blame their friends. I get it. But life's messy. Get your hands dirty.
Parents don't realize that there are options that they can put in place that will help protect their children and protect themselves during that process. Judge Jackson, our juvenile court judge, has this incredible process which he allows parents at one time, kind of like a freebie or a gimme. The parent can file unruly charges against their child if the child is being habitually unruly. And the key word is habitually. So you can go down to the police precinct and tell the police and file a complaint or petition that your child is being unruly, and the judge, if this is the first time your child's ever been in trouble, the judge will then hear the case and put the child on what's called informal adjustment. And what that is kind of like a pre-probation. So then, if the child over 6 months doesn't get in any other trouble and follows the rules of the court at that point, what the judge says, what the parents say, then everything disappears and they've never even had a juvenile court record.
We just need to understand that the world our kids are being exposed to is really kind of ugly. And we need to be a soft place to land, but we need to be an adult. We need to tough love, clear expectations, and please, please don't go around saying, oh my gosh, we all did it, it's no big deal, because you have no idea how many kids right now are struggling with heroin and OxyContin overdoses, and their parents have no idea.